Hello, class. Welcome back to part two of Act 3, Scene 1. So, as Polonius and Claudius withdraw behind the curtain in an act of duplicity, and Ophelia is preparing herself for Hamlet to come upon her, before he notices Ophelia, remember, Polonius and Claudius recognize that Hamlet always kind of is in this certain hallway at a certain time per day. So it's very interesting that he's there all the time and Ophelia just happens to show up there. But before we get to that, we have perhaps the most written about, perhaps the most famous speech in all of literature. It's definitely the most written about speech in all of literature. Um, to be or not to be? That is the question. What is he contemplating? Suicide, right? And the idea is we don't kill ourselves. Now, again, you don't have to be religious. Just put yourself in a religious person's shoes. Look at this from a Rogerian strategy, right? If you are a religious person and you believe in Catholicism and things of that nature, if you kill yourself, it's a mortal sin and you will not go to heaven. You will go to hell and face eternal damnation. So, what he's saying is he thinks about all of the problematic things in life that people put up with. And because of that, we choose to bear the problems in life rather than kill ourselves and kind of go to the unknown. I mean, what if you kill yourself and it's worse? What if you kill yourself and you go to hell? What if the afterlife is not heaven? Um, so he says that must give us pause. It's a speech about critical thinking, essentially, too. That when you think about it, there's going to be a consequence to your action, and if you're religious, the consequence is going to be negative. So that's why people put up with all the stuff they put up with on earth rather than kill themselves. There's the respect that makes calamity of so long life, he says on line 71. For who would bear the whips and scorns of time, right? The oppressor's wrong, the proud man's contumely, the pangs of despised love, the law's delay, the insolence of office, and the spurns that patient merit of the unworthy takes, when he himself might his quietus make with a bare bodkin. And then later on he says, thus conscience does make cowards of us all. When we think about it, we're not so quick to think about or to contemplate the act of suicide. Now, what's interesting here is we read literature to learn about life. Same stuff was going on back then that's going on now. The whips and scorns of time, right? Life's humiliations, if you would. What are they? The oppressor's wrong. Do people oppress humans still? Yeah. The proud man's contumely. Are people guilty of hubris? Are people in positions of power abusing that? Yep. The pangs of despised love. Are people still suffering from pain from love? Yep. The law's delay, right? I mean, are people suffering from the fact that the laws, right? Our legal system is inefficient, right? The insolence of office, hubris, 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 the arrogance, the insolence. Somebody's insolent, they're rude, demeaning. And the spurns the patient merit of the unworthy takes, right? The mistreatment that good people, right? The patient people, right? The spurns that patient people have to put up with right, that are unworthy, from rude people. Why would you put up with all this when you could just quiet it with your own bodkin, which is a knife? And he goes on to talk about sweating under a weary life, but it's the dread of something after death, the afterlife. We don't know. And that's what makes cowards of us all. He says, thus conscience, thinking about it, makes cowards of us all. And thus the native hue of resolution is sickled over with the pale cast of thought. Right? And enterprises of great pith and moment with this regard their currents turn awry and lose the name of action. That's why people don't act upon their thoughts when it comes to suicide, because you just don't know what's going to happen in the afterlife. Very, very logical perspective, critical thinking wise. Now notice he calls her, soft you now the fair Ophelia, nymph in thy orisons be all my sins remembered. So he sees the prayer book and he says, pray for me. Now notice how their conversation at first is rather polite, and he seems happy to see her. But what does she do? She gives him all his love letters back. Right? She says, take these again, for to the noble mind rich gifts wax poor when givers prove unkind. Boy, is that not true, right? Now notice how it rhymes when Shakespeare has something really important to say. Right? It's impressive that he makes it rhyme. What does Hamlet say? Right? You're giving me this stuff back. Are you honest? Are you fair? Are you honest and are you beautiful? And he goes on to this whole idea of the two working together and not working together. And this scene takes a quick turn. It goes to him acting very angrily, and he seems to be extremely suspicious that she was put up to this, and that either they're watching him or that she's going to go back and report what happens. Because when she gives him the love letters back, I think this is the fact, the premise that he bakes his inference on, that this is not her. This is her not doing it. She must have been put up to it. And what does he say? Where is your father? Right? This is all right around line 104 is when she says, rich gifts wax poor when givers prove unkind. Right? And line 131, he says, where's your father? And she says, at home, my lord. And he says, let the doors be shut upon him, that he may play the fool nowhere but at his own house. Farewell. Let him know he's not fooling anyone, unless he's going to stay at home and try to fool himself. I say there's a line, right? There's a quote, there's words right there. This line, it could be used as factual information to support the idea that he knows they're either listening, or he knows that she was put up to this by them. And in some ways it's kind of a warning. Whether or not her father's listening, he'll hear, and if he's not there listening, she's going to go back and tell him. And he also gives a warning in some ways to Claudius, right, when he says, line 149, those that are married already, all but one shall live. Now, he also denounces marriages. He tells her to get thee to a nunnery. Again, if he thinks her father is listening, what worse thing to suggest to his daughter than that she should go be a prostitute? Because this is the deal. Remember, nunnery. He doesn't say get thee to a convent. Convent, denotation of convent, is where nuns live. Nunnery was slang for a brothel. Yes, literally it means where nuns live, but that was slang for a brothel. So he doesn't say get thee to a convent, he says get thee to a nunnery. So the thing here is when you look at it from a feminist critical perspective, it's kind of paradoxical. If he's telling her to go to a nunnery, meaning go be a nun and never have sex again because you'll end up promiscuous like my mother, because again, he stereotypes all women as promiscuous. You could see that his worldview has changed based on his mother's behavior. If he's telling her to go to a convent nunnery, right, then he's trying to save her. He's saying, why would thou be a breeder of sinners? Right? Why would you even have kids? Right? And what do you need to do to have a child? To have sex. So he's saying, don't go to a convent, be a nun, so you don't end up like my mom. Or if he means nunnery, house of prostitution, he's not trying to save her. It's the opposite. He's being extremely cruel. He's essentially saying, right, you might as well, because like my mom, you're going to end up like this if you get married. Wow, what a crazy scene. Now, obviously, poor Ophelia, right? Afterwards, she says, woe is me, to have seen what I have seen, see is me, right? Woe is me is a very famous expression. We see it in this play here. Line 160. She's baffled and can only conclude that he's gone mad. Polonius, right, when him and Claudius get together after, he says, yeah, I think it's love, right? Claudius says, love? Right, line 161. His affection, line 162, excuse me. Love? His affections do not that way tend, nor what he spake, though it lacked form a little, was not like madness. There's something in his soul over which his melancholy sits on brood, and I do doubt the hatch and disclose will be some danger for which to prevent. I have in quick determination thus set it down, he shall with speed to England. Claudia says, I don't think it's love. Something's going on. I'm gonna get him out of here. I'm gonna send him to England. And what does Polonius say? No, no. But yet I do believe the origin and commencement of his grief sprung from neglected love. In some ways, does Polonius's hubris, his arrogance, prevent him from admitting that he may be wrong? I mean, again, he says just one more time. Let's spy on him one more time. Line 183. Let his queen mother alone, all alone, entreat him to show his grief. Let her be round with him, and I'll be placed to please you in the ear of all their conferences. If she find him not, to England send him, or confine him where your wisdom best shall think. Let me just try one more time. I know I'm right. I think I'm right. I think I'm right. Again, it's that arrogance when people have proof, right? Or possible proof that maybe their judgment is wrong, but yet they refuse to use Occam's razor and they still want to let their assumptions fuel their decision making process and their behaviors. We see that with Polonius. Look at how Act 3, Scene 1 ends. And the theme of madness is becoming more and more apparent. And again, madness is something that plays a role in our society. Mental illness, right? All the things we talked about that Hamlet's suffering from: anxiety, depression, multiple personality disorder, schizophrenia. In some ways, he's in denial, right? Um, what does Claudius say? Pay attention to the rhyme. It shall be so. Madness in great ones must not unwatched go. On that note, stay tuned for Act 3, Scene 2. Thank you for your patience, and if you have any questions, let me know.